Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I'm not joined by my co-host just yet, but they will be here. The title of this episode is Combining the Data. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode, part of the Burgundy Zone. You can go to the Frederick Podcast Network by going to www.listenfrederick.com. And we thought we'd bring in Ryan Fowler of the Draft Network and Bleacher Report to be able to talk about the Combine, the NFL Combine that wrapped up yesterday. So without further ado, Ryan, thank you so much for blessing us on this Monday evening, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you guys always having me on, Kyle.
Yes, sir. And I know it's just me. It's okay. But now, speaking of, but that being said, what are the latest rumors circulating around the Combine that a lot of the people talk, right? And who are the latest risers? Some stock people have gone down a little bit.
Yeah, man, I think the Combine, just really the late nights, early mornings, really surrounds around JJ McCarthy, quarterback from Michigan. Wherever you have JJ McCarthy on your board, whether it's at 15, whether it's at 10, move him up. Heading into the Combine, I fully expected him as a great fit at 8 to the Atlanta Falcons. I would not be shocked if it's quarterback to come off the board in April. JJ, I thought was, we didn't see him throw, we didn't see him run, but getting to know him a little bit, both when he was on camera and off camera, he's as advertised. I think he's someone he's obviously killed the interview process, but he's just someone that really took over away from the Xavier Worthy 4.21, the Braden Fisk outstanding workout at interior defensive line, and all the other standouts that we saw. But for guys on the opposite side of things that I wanted to see more of heading into the week, and what I didn't see a lot of even at the Senior Bowl, that's Cam Kinchins from Miami. I don't know what to do with Cam Kinchins. He's small, the instincts are great, but you want to play that ceiling roof type of defender to where, look, I saw you struggle with just staying hip to hip with tight ends down at the Senior Bowl. Then you come out and run whatever you ran, 4.7. It wasn't good from Cam Kinchins, and I have not been impressed with him in this pre-draft process. And the biggest thing at the Combine, everything is context, to where you're trying to line up film with obviously just the positional drills, to where it's not everything, but it is something, and weight is obviously held towards that. And if there's one guy for me that's really slipping to where we thought he was going to be safety one in this class, I'm not sure we see Cam Kinchins off the board in maybe the first 4 rounds of this draft.
Wow.
So we're talking about the draft, but free agency is right around the corner. Obviously, this team has a lot of holes to fill on the roster, but what do you think that some holes that they're going to fill through free agency that are be like, kind of hit the ground running day one starters for them, as opposed to kind of finding those guys in the draft?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what they do at tight end, and I'm very interested to see what they do specifically at corner, with Kendall obviously as a free agent, and at linebacker. They got to get some players on defense, because I do think early in the second round, they're going to target edge, whether that is a Braylon Trice, a Chris Braswell, maybe inside-out versatile guy like Darius Robinson, who right now he's another guy that's up in the air. Whether how you evaluate him is going to be important to scheme, and what Dan Quinn potentially would love to see Darius do. But I think in free agency, I think getting some guys, maybe some veterans in the middle of that defense, getting some guys in the secondary potentially to add some pop in that secondary's room to pair with St. Just and Emmanuel Forbes, who I am, as I've told you guys before, I think we all are. We're excited to see Emmanuel under Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn and see what his potential is going to be. So really it focuses for me on defense, because, again, on offense, if you want to add some tackles, some guards, a center, whatever you want to do, this class has some bodies on all 3 days for you to add to that offense.
Yeah, and it's time for Kyle's Conspiracy Corner here, because I do want to ask you a question. The quarterbacks at the Combine, obviously the top 3 did not throw, which I kind of expected for Penix and the others to throw. But, the funny thing about it was Caleb did not interview with the Bears at the Combine. They pushed it to after at his pro day, I think he said, but he did meet with the Commanders, and he said it went very well. What is the latest you're hearing regarding these quarterbacks? How did they do in their interviews?
I've heard all good things. I really have. I haven't heard anything negative as of now, and I'm definitely not going to sit here and try to judge these kids' character, because I've spent a small amount of time with them. Most of the time I spent with Jaden Daniels, even caught up with him before the Combine at the airport, just chatting with him and his reps, and Brian Thomas and all the LSU guys. But look, I've heard all good things, and I think sitting there even at the podium sessions just inside the convention center in Indy and just listening to these guys speak, the biggest thing for me is it's really cool to watch these guys lead a locker room of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, but projecting them to lead grown men that are trying to feed their families in an NFL locker room that are 26, 27, some 30, 32, 33. That's the difference. And I think when you hear Caleb speak, I've been impressed with him. I like his confidence. Some people may rub the wrong way. That's an athletic confidence part about him that I really like. Drake May was extremely impressive. I saw that, obviously, the quote where he said, what do you say? You want to game plan with me, not against me. I love that confidence about him. I was impressed with even a guy like Spencer Rattler, guys. And for me, I have Spencer Rattler above Michael Penix in this class. I do.
Mm.
For me on my board in the middle of the second round, I think he's going to surprise some people. And I wouldn't be shocked if he goes somewhere. If this team does not take a guy like JJ McCarthy, if they're there at 6, the New York Giants, don't be shocked if they take a guy like Spencer Rattler on day 2.
Mm.
Yeah, that's Kyle's guy, Spencer Rattler. So you mentioned that the offensive line is a really deep draft position throughout the draft. Another deep position is wide receiver, and with Curtis Samuel hitting free agency, and you don't know what you're going to get out of De'Ami Brown and kind of those back end of the roster guys. Who are some wide receivers that Washington should be looking out for? Just because, like I said, they're going to need some add some guys, especially some guys with a little bit of juice to add to that room.
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. And I think you look at really the front end of day 2 is I'm excited. And I know everyone gets excited about the Malik Neighbors, the Romes, and Marvin Harrisons of the world. But that early day 2 bucket, that late round 1 bucket of receivers are just a bunch of studs. Now, I don't think Washington's going to go there early day 2 for your Lad McConkey's, Roman Wilson's, Keon Coleman's, A.D. Mitchell's type of vibe. But I think moving into round 3, early portions, maybe they want to grab a guy like Jacob Cowing from Arizona. The early portions of the Senior Bowl, people were underwhelmed. There's some stuff going on behind the scenes a little bit that I can't share here, but he just came into Indy and was sensational. And I loved what I saw from a guy like Jacob Cowing. Jaquan Jackson, I wanted to see more of from Tulane. I even chatted with Jaquan. He said, look, I'm getting late round 2 grades, round 3 grades. And look, the combine performance from Jaquan flat out. It wasn't good enough for me. So he's a guy I think can be that versatile type of weapon. But if they're a team that even wants to move forward back into of day 3, maybe it's a Jamari Thrash from Louisville, Malik Washington from Virginia, or maybe they want to get some bigger bodies, guys, in round 3, whether it's a Brendan Rice from a USC, a different type of body type, because we've talked about it on here. Washington doesn't have that bigger body in the building because there's no more Gandy Golden, Kelvin Harmon, and obviously the Cam Sims experience never worked out in DC. So bigger types of bodies, maybe a Joshua Cephas from UTSA. UTSA guys, every single year, they have these high-level athletes. And it's Joshua Cephas, it's Tariq Woolen, Zachary Franklin before he transferred to Ole Miss. Guys everywhere at UTSA. So there's some different names on different days that could fit a multitude of skill sets to pair nicely with obviously Terry and Jahan that are going to be that 1-2 for a long time, hopefully.
Yeah, and typical for the mainstream media to really pick up on the 4.22 by Xavier Worthy. Obviously, everywhere you went, you saw that 40 being run, but nobody's really talking about the new vert record set by the offensive line yesterday. So Ryan, talk about some of the standout performers that really helped themselves yesterday in the combine.
Man, I have to start with Troy Fautanu. And look, his footwork at his size, he moves like a damn running back, and it is unbelievable. And I think, guys, at the end of the day, it really comes down to just the new athletes, a new breed of athletes that we're seeing. We always talk about bigger, faster, stronger. But my Lord, I mean, these guys now they're prepping their bodies, not just college in the last 2 years, and they're really getting their pre-draft process and early grades from these scouting companies, but all back to high school and even middle school where the 7-on-7 circuit starts. So you're just seeing athletes on athletes on athletes. But Troy Fautanu, I thought his footwork was excellent. I loved what I saw from Tanner Bornolini from Wisconsin. He's someone that was expected to test well in general, and he did. But someone that came down to the Senior Bowl, you know what you're going to get from a Big Ten country-fed, cornbread-fed dude out of Wisconsin that's just going to get after people within the interior. I thought he did really well. Andrew Rame from Oklahoma is a name that I've liked for a long time within the guts of an offense. But I'm interested to see how Cliff Kingsbury and what they want to do and types of body types that they want to add at guard. Because if they want to live on the north-south plane and add road graders like a Cooper Beebe from Kansas State, or do they want to get more athletic and get guys that can pull a little bit and add a Javian Cohen from Miami, transfer from Alabama, or a Christian Mahogany out of that Boston College pipeline that we've seen with Zion Johnson and guys like Chris Lidstrom over the years. So offensive line was sensational. Even a guy like Roger Rosengarten from Washington that played opposite of Fautanu this year. I thought a lot of guys stood out for me, Kyle.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm just an evaluator. I like to look at watch film, watch football. People could talk about what kind of film that is, but that being said, one guy that I really like so far is Christian Jones from Texas, the right tackle. Just kind of give me your thoughts on him because PFN is having him as a sixth to seventh rounder, but dude, I think he's a third to fourth. I think you could start right away. What do you think?
Christian Jones will not be on the board in the sixth round. I will say that. He was outstanding for Texas this year. He was pissed in my conversations with him that he even gave up one sack this year, which came to Braylon Trice in the CFP semi. Christian Jones, I'll say this about Christian before we ever talk about him as a player. He's going to be loved by fans in that locker room right away. He is a hell of a young man and a hell of a young man as far as a character perspective. I will talk about his characters. I've really gotten to know Christian in this process, and he is outstanding, an outstanding individual that's just wants an opportunity to come in the building and compete. And at right tackle, to where, look, the whole Andrew Wiley experiment flat out has not worked in Washington. And I don't want to even try to move on with that. So get a young guy in the building, protect the arm side of whoever the quarterback is in Washington moving forward. I like Christian Jones as well. I think he can, his pass pro dropping his anchor. He never gets into that third kick slide. That's the really ultimate sin of an offensive tackle. Always keeps it within two, has a strong outside arm. Good in the run game, not the best athlete in the world, but someone absolutely, Kyle, that can come in right away and compete for snaps on the right side.
Hall?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. My bad. You
I'm
were shaking
happy
your head
right now.
like.
I'm speechless. I'm good.
So, sticking like I have a lot of offensive questions. I
Mhm.
feel like Washington has been missing that home run hitter at the running back position.
Yeah.
I would say maybe since Chris Thompson has been here, and me personally, I want to add a guy like it doesn't have to be obviously the first couple rounds. It can be a later round guy, maybe even an undrafted free agent type of guy. But who are some of the guys that are kind of those shifty, kind of can take it 80 yards to the house type of running backs in the draft right now?
Man, I think this running back class has a lot of different body types. Even though at the top, your Marshawn Lloyds, Blake Corum, Trey Benson, Ray Davis, a lot of those guys have similar skill sets as some bulking guys that you expect to be that RB1, live inside the tackles a little bit. But as you move into that day two bucket of your Bucky Irvings from Oregon, your Dylan Laube from New Hampshire, or even you get further and it's a Deshaun Fenwick from Oregon State, Jaden Sheridan from Monmouth. I really liked what I saw on tape from a guy like Amani Bailey from TCU. Now you turn on the combine workout and it's not going to impress you, but 40 speed and game speed is different. And you watch that Colorado tape of Amani Bailey, and the kid can fly and he's rocked up and he'll get after people both inside and outside the tackles. But I think a guy that really impressed, and we again another guy we expected to test well, but he's got fresh tread on the tires, which is going to be so intriguing, and that is Isaac Garendo from Louisville, who completely blew up the combine, and not just because of numbers perspective, but he is someone that when he got the opportunity at Louisville to compete and show up, he was someone that was consistently productive when given the chance behind Jawar Jordan in the ACC this year. So Isaac Garendo on day three, I think is going to be someone as an explosive type of piece to come in maybe as an RB3, give somebody a shot to look, Chris Rodriguez, B-Rob, I'm going to compete with you. And I want guys in the building that are going to show up and be multi-phase contributors. So that's just a couple guys' names in space. Also, Michael Wiley as well from Arizona, I think had an excellent Senior Bowl, and he's a maybe guy on day three as well.
Now, to wrap this up, Brian, I only have a couple more questions for you, but let's talk about combining the data and let's talk about linebackers and DBs.
Yeah.
Earlier in the weekend, Peyton Wilson running the 4.4, that obviously translates to the film onto the field. So this is obviously somebody you already felt really, really good about. But also Edgerrin Cooper running a 4.5 at his height and speed, just being a freak of nature that he is. Talk about those guys in their days. Who were some bigger surprises of there?
Yeah, I think this linebacker class remains underrated. It is top heavy with Trotter, and of course, you just mentioned Edgerrin and Peyton. But the guys on day three that I think popped a ton, and there's three names really Jordan McGee from Temple, who's had a ton of buzz. He had third round grades in the spring from Blesto, which was really good to see. And then he didn't get a ton of attention at Temple, but he comes to the combine, had a hell of a workout, an athlete to add in your defense on day three. I think Edwafon Ulafosio from Washington had an excellent workout as someone that can play low. He can play in the middle of your defense, also in the fringe areas and flip your hips. And then also a guy that I love in this class is Darius Musau from UCLA. All the attention for the UCLA Bruins this year was on Leitu Latu, Gabriel, and Grayson Murphy, who are twins in this class, both down at the Shrine Bowl. Grayson was not out at the Senior Bowl. Gabriel was, or excuse me, at the Combine. Grayson wasn't. But when you look at Darius in the middle of a defense and you need athletes, and in Washington, when we've seen David Mayo and his 300-year-old legs trying to run around, I'm tired of seeing that in the middle of this Washington defense. So Jamin Davis needs competition. We'll see what they do with a guy like Khalid Hudson, but they got to get some fresh blood in the building, and you need athletes. So more so back into day three, beyond the Cedric Grays, Junior Colsons of the world, in the middle of that round three bucket as well. And Junior Colson, I do expect to go higher as well, also.
Yeah, I was watching his film yesterday, matter of fact.
Yeah.
But the DBs, somebody like Quinyon Mitchell, who from the Senior Bowl I was probably one of the biggest risers up until that point. Talk about those DBs out there like TJ Tampa and others that could possibly be there for Washington, not middle, but around that area.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed with Ennis Rakestraw. He's still banged up. I absolutely love the tape. You turn on that Georgia tape, and he's the guy that wants to make you run through a wall. But it's really the nickel guys in this group that I just love. And there's three names, and that's Mike Sanders still from Michigan. Now he didn't meet that 5'10" threshold that was so important for scouts heading into the week, but the tape is absolutely fantastic for someone that can play inside out. Andrew Phillips from Kentucky went up to the broad and just damn near jumped out of Lucas Oil Stadium. He was a nationally ranked triple jumper in high school, the number one ranked in the country. That was obviously you expected him to test well in that type of event. You watch him in the SEC and that type of stuff, the explosion, the short area quickness really shows up. But a guy I just continue to talk about whatever show I'm on, and that is Jerrion Jones from Florida State, because he has that inside out ability, the length to reroute guys, the speed to flip and run, and he's just a dog on a defense. And I think Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, they want guys. Look, Joe Witt's already said it. We're going to hit people. And I'm not saying that the corner needs to be the most physical player on a defense, but when you're in the fringe areas and you're having to take down guys in Philly or guys in New York, if Saquon potentially is back in New York one-on-one, are you going to cower behind the couch? Or are you going to stick your face in the mud and try to make a tackle? And Jerrion Jones can do that and show up in multiple ways, again, against the pass, whether it's a tight end receiver and against the run.
I mean, last question I have for you just to wrap this up. What are your feelings on the quarterbacks? Everyone apparently has their 2 cents on what the feeling is on who the quarterback's going to be in late April, even though it's early March, and Lord knows what can happen between now and then. But what are your feelings right now?
For Washington at 2?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think it is Drake May. I do. All the conversations that I had in Indianapolis, I know a lot of the conversations about Jaden Daniels. We could sit here and have a lot.
Is there any reason why there's a difference now than before?
On with Drake and Jaden?
Yeah.
So for me, I've always had Drake over Jaden Daniels for me. There's a little bit of a separation there between 1-2 with Caleb Drake and Jaden. The reason why I say that is it's really nice seeing Jaden sit back and deliver to Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, 1-2 read, separate, and I'm going to deliver down the field. A lot of the comparisons you'll see around the industry is that Jaden Daniels is Lamar Jackson. We got to stop that. That's a two-time MVP. And from a short area quickness perspective, we've never seen someone like Lamar Jackson really ever in the game. Jaden Daniels as a runner is a pursuit angle and outrun those angles type of guy like Robert Griffin III was. I said it on my podcast today. You guys remember that run against the Vikings that Robert Griffin III had, escaping out of the left and outrunning the defense. That's a Jaden Daniels type of a quick acceleration and outrun angles. So as a runner, Jaden Daniels, I think as an athlete is sensational. We just sat here last year and said 6'4", 245-pound Anthony Richardson needs to take care of his body. And he missed most of 2023 because he got knocked around. Now, the athleticism is going to make everybody excited, but Drake May also that goes underrated in his game is the mobility outside of structure. But I want a guy that wins above the neck first, has all the arm talent, the true arm talent in the world to win within the structure, be a quarterback, and also understand the difference between creating outside of structure as a runner first and also understanding when to step up inside a pocket and make a throw with a guy about to hit your ribs. And he truly has the arm talent fundamentally to truly make every throw in the book. So that's why Drake May is in front of Jaden Daniels for me.
Yeah, well, the argument that really got me, Ryan, was Washington isn't really in a position to go with after Jaden Daniels because of last season they took a smaller guy in Emmanuel Forbes and how that turned out. So politically, the image of it probably wouldn't fit very well. But Ryan, I can't thank you enough for joining us on this beautiful Monday evening, sir. Go and enjoy your week. Enjoy leftover after the Combine week. Get some rest, brother, and head into this draft process.
Absolutely. Thank you as always, guys. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Ryan. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Ryan Fowler. Always appreciate his time being able to hear about the latest and greatest on the Combine. Anything you wanted to add on it before we get into our fan questions, brother?
No, it's just like you said, always love having Ryan on, always knowledgeable, always just so knowledgeable about all the draft prospects. And it's always good to get somebody that was at like boots on the ground at the combine to come back and share what they saw and heard while they were up there.
Yeah, now let's get into our fan questions, and this one's from OC92 in the Discord. Thank you, OC. This question is, tell me why someone would not, quotes, would not be okay with Sam Howell starting again next year, and then tell me your personal views regarding Sam Howell.
So basically, like, say why someone wouldn't want Sam to start next year.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, if you're a quarterback and obviously it's a long season, it's his first year starting full season, and you're gonna have your ups, your downs, unless you're Pat Mahomes or someone like that. You're gonna have your ups, your downs, like more than likely as a first time starter quarterback. But you want to see the growth and the like the maturation at the position. And it just seemed like the first half of the season, yes, there was a lot of ups and downs, but you could kind of see that little arc of like, okay, he's getting better and better, and like he's learning more and more week by week. And then it just seemed like that second half of the season, it was kind of just nothing but all kind of like downhill, and there was a lot more negative than positive. That kind of, if you're just kind of it's a what have you done for me now kind of league. And the lasting images of Sam Howell are taking the sacks, throwing the picks, bailing out the pocket, and like I said, just all the negative stuff that was coming along with those last couple of weeks of football. Even though, again, it was more of a team thing as opposed to like just a personally only Sam Howell thing. The whole team was bad those last couple of weeks, but yeah, that would be the number one thing. I guess another reason would be I'm not going to say the ceiling of Sam Howell, but you look at these other prospects that are coming into the draft, and it's always a comparison with any position on the field. And it's like, can I upgrade it at this position and get younger, or can I roll with the guy? Do I trust the guy that I have on my roster to be that steady force for me throughout a season and beyond? And you just look at some of these QB prospects that are coming in, and they probably have the higher ceiling than Sam Howell does at this point and beyond. So that would be reason number two. And I'll let you, give a reason.
Why someone would not be okay with Sam Howell starting next year. One of the reasons why they would say why they would not be okay with it is if they were ignorant to the fact of Cliff Kingsbury and how interested he would be into how he would use Sam Howell. Like for us, it's easy for us to say that Cliff Kingsbury doesn't want to work with Sam Howell at all because he's a new guy, old quarterback. A lot of ignorant people are going to have that mindset. But, Cliff Kingsbury going in saying, this is my starting quarterback. I can work with him, right? That's different than Cliff Kingsbury coming in having Caleb Williams at his disposal. The motivation factor there is a little bit different. So that's one reason why I would say that somebody probably would not be okay with Sam Howell, just because that are you really getting the most possible out of that situation right there? My personal views on Sam Howell is that he is a very, very good backup. And the reason why I say the backup, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all, but it almost is like Taylor Heineke in the way where him being the backup, you never know what could happen. Like he could have that 4 touchdown game, or he could have that 4 interception game, right? Like, and that's the one thing about Sam that you have in your back pocket is if he fits into what your OC wants, why wouldn't you have him as your backup? And I understand the whole political aspect, how I've felt about Sam up until this point of saying that you had to trade him or whatnot. I'm just saying if Sam isn't mature enough as an adult naturally and as a human, because it's going to be hard for somebody to get replaced and to be okay with that situation, be a helpful teammate. That takes a very, very strong person to do that. All I'm saying is that I think that Sam is a very, very capable backup quarterback, and that he's somebody you would feel very confident in moving forward. Because of what he showed you in 1 year of starting, having his third, fourth offensive coordinator in 4 years, still being able to lead in passing yards, obviously led in attempts, but he makes too many mistakes. And the things I saw him in college is escaping out of clean pockets, running into contact, not protecting the football, and not being able to really orchestrate the offense and have good touch, right? Accuracy sometimes seemed to be an issue, and that was something that I saw last year, and that's who Sam is at a quarterback, and that's okay, and that's all right. It's just I understand the political aspect. New regime, they want a new quarterback. I understand that, and they raise ticket prices, man. We got to use your brain here. Now the next question that we have, and a really good question from Orange Crush. Thank you, sir. This question from Scott Hartley in the UK. Oi! In the Discord.
Oi.
Hall, What's one position post free agency and draft that you're confident will be much better positioned than when we finished the season?
Mm, I will say I'll say left guard. I think that obviously a lot of the new NFL, it's come that middle pressure, that interior pressure is what really kills quarterbacks and really wreaks havoc on a pocket as far as like enclosing you in the pocket. And if you have good edge defenders, obviously to set the edge and rush with integrity, you can basically just cage that quarterback in. He has nowhere to go. But whenever you're a quarterback getting rushed up the middle, you can't really see anything. You got people in front of your face. Maybe you got linemen falling down in front of you at your feet, your knees. Obviously, that's going to shake a guy in the pocket. So, and then if you go back to last year, obviously, outside of Sam Cosmi, the interior was not what it should have been as far as a sustainable pocket and um, pocket protection. So, I would say that left guard position, because it's been in flux for a couple years now. So it's just been guy after guy, replacement after replacement, and I just feel like they are going to hit free agency, maybe even the draft, but I would say free agency and get that position locked down. Or maybe I know a lot of people talked about Andrew Wiley's natural position is at guard. Maybe they flop him over to guard and they have a battle in camp between a free agent and Wiley, or a rookie and Wiley. But I think that the left guard and even center for that matter is going to be a lot better than it was last year, just because again that middle interior pressure for a quarterback is just a drive killer and a play killer.
And just putting this caveat in there, I don't mean this disrespectfully whatsoever, but I have one on each side of the
Oh,
football.
you mean it disrespectfully? Don't lie.
Doing this for each side of the football, Scott. Defensively, linebacker. Immediately off bat, I am confident that will be in a better position after the draft of free agency. And then offensively, I will say tight end. Um, I don't mean it. I love Logan Thomas. I love the fact that we brought him here. I thought it was the right decision to extend him. Things just happen, and that's life. You can't go back pointing fingers. It just happened, and try to do your best to fix it. Moving forward, too many times you try to pile on people, make fun of people, and just move on, dude. Things happen. Now, the next question that we have, this is from Tony Shivers in Discord. It's a really good question, Hall. His question is, do you think Norton Jr., Witt, and Quinn will be able to get good production out of Jamin?
Oh yeah, I believe they're going to get good to great production out of Jamin. I mean, honestly,
If he's
just
playing.
Jamin by yeah. No, I think they said something about his jail time got suspended and all
Yeah,
that.
but that
So
doesn't mean that Goodell hasn't ruled on it yet.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But I don't see him getting like a full season suspension, nothing like that. But
Uh,
I think that yeah, I think Jamin they'll get good play out of Jamin. Jamin's been growing since his rookie year. See, like year by year, steadily. But obviously, it hasn't been what everyone's wanted as far as like him getting drafted in the first round and kind of being that field general that everyone thought he was going to be and what they drafted him to be. But like I said, I think that Dan Quinn's already talked about how they see the traits and they're going to carve out a role and kind of play to his strengths. Was I think this coaching staff is going to do a lot of for all the players on the roster. They're going to play to their strengths. And if you look at Jamin's strength right now, it's getting off the edge. It's a blitzing linebacker. It's running sideline to sideline, getting after guys. So I think that, like I said, at least said Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., Ken Norton Jr., those guys, they're going to see that, and I think that they're not going to use him exactly like Michael Parsons, but I can see them putting him on the edge. I can see them sending him on blitzes, kind of being that QB spy, like with the athletic quarterbacks, because he's an athletic guy, something like that. So I definitely think that they're going to squeeze everything they can out of Jamin Davis going into this fifth year option year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Do I think that they'll be able to get good production out of Jamin? Of course. If Jamin's on the field, without a doubt, right? Because going into his last year, obviously he's very talented with the legal issues, but we don't know how ownership feels, but I'm sure they're going to use the production, right? And we have to imagine, you know how Black Friday, you know how like it's not really funny, it's kind of embarrassing. But all those videos when the store opens, everyone's flooding through, and they're heading to the cash registers, right? Well, that's what this defense is essentially going to be doing against quarterbacks and ball carriers and receivers. Anybody who touches the football, that's what you're going to be getting in your face. And when you look at Jamin in that regard, Tony, you start getting excited because you know what that means for Jamin. Jamin now is going to be, free to be able to use his athletic ability, not have to think so much. And then on top of that, Tony, now imagine what's going to happen with Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Because in years past, just your own memory, like if you think of a memory and you think of Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne during a play, what do you think of? You think of them standing up, the defensive tackle, just standing there trying to throw him off, right, to get the running back. You don't think of Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne as throwing a guy over trying to get to the quarterback. Well, that's what's going to be happening from here on out. So, yes, without a doubt, I think this defensive staff will be able to get really good production out of Jamin Davis, especially if he is playing. The next question that we have is one that we forgot, and I didn't say anything on Twitter about, but happy belated birthday to Cameron Curl. His birthday was yesterday. And his question is, Scott, this is from our boy Andy Lockhart in the Discord. What do you think of Washington not wishing Cam Curl a happy birthday yesterday? That means he's not going to be re-signed, or just people reading too much into it?
I think it's people reading too much into it. It's the off season. It's hard to like kind of if you're a social media person. If it's during the season, obviously like you're on. I'm not saying you're not on top of things, but it's more in your face during the season because you're always around the facility, you're around the guys. There's probably more updates coming at you and stuff like that, more information being handed to you. As far as like the off season goes, it's like the social media teams is trying to like get the free agency stuff out there, the new coaching staff stuff out there, videos from the combine, whatever they're getting. And I mean, should they have done it? Obviously, yes. I think that they should have wished him happy birthday, even though he is technically I mean, he's still on the roster, yeah, but he's like not on the roster technically. But I do think that it's just people reading way too far into it.
Yeah, I do think that people are reading too far into it, but obviously, every single human being on this earth wants to feel wanted, right? And obviously, the happy birthday thing, obviously, that's something for your family to make you feel good about. But in the same breath, it's good for your work to do that, but it's not like that's ever going to happen. Like, I had a recent coworker who had a birthday one day, like the whole day went by, and I didn't say it. Like, I don't know, I just didn't think about it at all. I don't know how else to explain it. But basically, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's my birthday today." I was like, "Oh, that's dope. Happy birthday." Like, why didn't you tell me? But I understand that part of it from their perspective. But in the same breath, though, like you have to be able to say, like, that you're people, and obviously he's not under contract. It is what it is. Just a happy birthday. It is what it is. But people just want to be wanted at the end of the day. And obviously, this is Washington, Andy. Do you really think that everyone's not going to read too much into something? I mean, when the name change thing was coming up, people were breaking down like the video sent out for like this by second screen grabs of being able to try to find out what the new name is. Like, come on, man. We don't need to do all that. Like, we know what this fan base represents and how crazy we are. Of course they were going to read too much into it. It's what we do here. Now, let's go to our next question. And this one is in the Discord from our boy Tim Towner. Is there any chance we trade back and still take a quarterback like Penix later in the first or in the second round? My bad, I said his name wrong. Penix.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance. There's never a 0% chance of anything in this league, but I would say that unless they're just hit with like a crazy like Godfather type offer, I think that they're going to stay in pat at 2 and draft that quarterback.
I agree with you there. Now we are joined by our next guest, Mr. Mitch Tischler. How are you doing on this beautiful, fine Monday evening, sir?
Gentlemen, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Over the weekend, I didn't feel full. I didn't feel complete, Mitch, and that was because the offensive line combine drills was yesterday. And now that has transpired, I'm all good to go. So that being said, I got to ask you, what was any standout surprises from the combine, specifically from yesterday, if not any of them?
Well, I certainly want to hear your thoughts on the offensive line as well. One guy I like a lot is Amarius Mims out of Georgia. He's probably mid to late first round, so probably not there in the second round when the Commanders come back on the board. But he had a really good 10-yard split in the 40, and then also tested well in the short shuttle, the 3-cone drill. And those are two kind of drills or pieces of information I think bode well for a lineman and go a long way. It's the 10-second split, and then also the short cone drill.
Hey, Mitch, is that like a made-up background? Is that really your background? That's really cool.
That's really my background. I'm in our Monumental
nice.
Studios. We're getting ready to launch a lot of new stuff over here, and you're getting a little sneak preview of what one of the Caps rooms looks like.
That's really cool, dude.
Ooh, very
A
nice.
little bit
Very
too much
nice.
light on me, so you can't really see all the hats and stuff like that. But I'll move out of the way for a sec so you can get a look.
All right, I'm gonna take a screenshot later on and zoom in. That's really cool. Sorry, Hall.
No, it's all good. So obviously, this is a quarterback-driven league, and this is a quarterback-driven town. We love to talk about the quarterbacks and the drama surrounding the quarterbacks. Adam Schefter went on Pat McAfee today talking about there's a possibility that Washington would be open to Kirk Cousins, and anything is possible. They're exploring all avenues. What do you say to that, sir?
You need to throw up the Kevin Garnett. Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Listen, there's a lot of different ways that this Commanders team can attack that quarterback position, and honestly, the number 2 overall pick. And part of all of it is that this is obviously the first time that we're working with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and getting a feel for the way that they want to do things. But I think there's some smoke to the Kirk Cousins, coming back home thing, but there's a lot of factors that have to play before that happens. And, I think that, to me, if I was the GM, I'm sticking it to and taking a quarterback there. And I'm at least I'm exploring the veterans that are available. But to me, you only have so many opportunities to, pick in the top 5 and the top 2 really. And I think you got to take advantage of them. And, the one thing that I really like about this group right now is different than the Ron Rivera, GM portion of it. When they had the number 2 overall pick, there was no discussion of trade. There was no discussion of anything else. It was from the second they got that pick until, the second that they walked up to the podium to make it, it was Chase Young. And at the time, it's easy. Hindsight is easy, but I was pretty bullish on the fact that I wanted them to at least explore some trade options and discuss it with other teams. And by all accounts, everyone was like, oh yeah, you can want to trade, but you got to have somebody, that wants to, you have to have a partner. If you don't make yourself available, you're never going to find a partner. And I like the fact that these guys are at least out there listening, talking. Certainly last week in Indianapolis, we heard a lot of different theories about what Washington might do with the quarterback position, and honestly with the roster as a whole. And you know what? I like the fact that they're sitting there open-eared, with the idea that, hey, we can go any direction with this thing. So ultimately, I think they stick at 2 and take quarterback, and I think it's a slow-moving process this offseason as far as free agency goes. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of big splashes, but this is a team that this is a roster that needs pretty major overhauling to get to a point where they can even discuss competing for anything real.
And that being said, Mr. Mitch Tischler, the transition king, Washington made some moves this past week. And
I don't know that I want to be the transition king for that.
or the other vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it, Mitch. But I don't want to visualize it. But I want to kind of explain it. It's going to be very long. I'm not trying to sound disrespectful or anything like that. But this past week, Washington had gone away from Leno, from Logan Thomas, obviously from Gates as well. That being said, as a GM, you could look at it and saying, if those guys are still on the roster, that's essentially kicking the can down the road of not repairing the offensive line. If really repairing the offensive line is what you wanted to do. So that being said, with those guys' removal, do you think that is more of a solution than a problem?
Yeah, I think it's, I don't want to talk bad about these guys because they all were good players, are good players. More than anything, they're all good guys. Which I think is a big thing. I think you have to look at all 3 cuts kind of, or maybe you look at the Leno and the Logan Thomas cuts kind of similar in that they both are veterans that, didn't have guaranteed money. But listen, both of those guys were great guys, good, and played good football at times, but their best football is behind them. And, particularly for Logan, I feel bad because most of that was injury related. Leno is a warrior. He played through tons of injuries. And you need somebody like that. But at the end of the day, you got to upgrade that O-line. And to me, the biggest position that you need to be good at is left tackle. Because if you have a left tackle that you can leave on an island, then all this talk about, sending running backs and tight ends to chip and help out, if you know that your left side is locked down, how much easier does that make to slide the entire O-line to the right? And then all of a sudden you can, double team some guys where you need to. Maybe you only keep a running back in and don't have to chip with a tight end, or vice versa, keep a tight end in, let the running back go out into the flat. So it was a position of need for a massive upgrade. And as much as, Leno was a good guy in the community and a good guy, around us and whatnot, it was something that had to happen.
And for context, the reason why I say it would possibly be a problem just because you're creating, like people would say offensive line was already a need, and you're taking two guys out of the equation already. That's one big problem on your plate. And that's the only reason I was saying that for the viewers. Sorry.
Right. So Leno cost about $8 million this year, I believe.
Right.
You can find Leno style production for much less than that, and hopefully you can find better production for that price tag. And that's why it makes sense to get rid of that guy. Yes, you're creating another quote unquote hole that you have to fill, but you had to upgrade there anyway, and to keep a guy like Leno around, especially when Wiley is most likely sticking around because of his contract. You're not really creating a new hole. It's just you're making it obvious that that's something that you need to fix. And I think when you look at this roster, there's tons of other places that they need to do that. I mean, you look at the linebacking situation, even though there are bodies that are there, they need to be improved. There are bodies at edge rusher that can play, and I liked what I saw from Andre Jones in spurts last year, and KJ Henry as well. But you can't go into the season with those two guys as your starters, and so you're going to see them upgrade, along the way. I think the interesting one is Nick Gates. Them cutting Nick Gates is interesting because Bobby Johnson, the new offensive line coach, coached his last year in New York with him, so he obviously knows him well, and whatever reasoning was behind that. What I liked about Nick Gates was he was a fantastic locker room guy. He was a guy that the players on your team rallied around and the players on other teams hated. And quite frankly, in Washington, we haven't had a whole lot of that over the past
more of those guys,
decade or so. You had Trent Williams, who was that guy, and since everything went down with Trent, you need a guy with some nastiness.
Before that, it was Sean.
Sure. I mean, there have been guys before that, but the past 5-6 years, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever you want to say, there haven't really been a lot of guys that block through the echo of the whistle, are always going downfield looking to pick off a DB that's trying to jump on a pile. We saw it a bunch. A guy who's, dropping double birds to the crowd after a touchdown. Offensive lines in particular, but teams in general need some nastiness. You need a guy that can, that's a thorn in everyone's side. You can add that in free agency, certainly. They can go out and get somebody, but they need to, because right now, I'm not saying anything against the O-line that they have there, but you need someone who can step in and be a pain.
My man. Now to wrap this up, Mitch, I only have a couple more questions for you, brother. But I'm not saying everybody that transpired at the drill, but number one surprise, your biggest surprise of the draft, of the combine, sorry.
Interesting. Biggest surprise of the combine?
I know it's easy to say the Xavier Worthy, but any player that kind of numbers jumped out to you that you weren't expecting?
Honestly, Mims was my biggest surprise, which is why I brought him up earlier. Okay. He was a guy that I thought was going to be closer to 7th or 8th, maybe amongst the O-line, and maybe drop into the second round. After his testing, I don't think that he will. In fact, I think, it's going to be interesting where Graham Barton ends up. He's the Duke kind of tackle/guard. He tested well as well, but I'm wondering if maybe, he's a guy that kind of falls back a touch because he might be more of a guard than a tackle. Jordan Morgan is a guy for a while now that I've kind of earmarked as who I want them to go after at 36. He had a good combine as well. I'm a little concerned that he might sneak up into the first round as well. At the end of the day, there's kind of 8 O-linemen who I think are kind of your first tier. Obviously, to me, Alt's number 1, and then maybe there's a gap, whatever. But tier 1, there's about 7 or 8 guys, and I don't think they're all going to go in the first round. But the NFL, crazier things happen, and when there's a run on tackles, there's a run on tackles. So most importantly, if they go quarterback at 2, picks 36 and 40 have to be, to me, kind of best player available at a position of need. So 36 and 40 to me have to be tackle, edge rusher, or vice versa. But those 2 picks need to be in the trenches.
Yeah, and Jordan Morgan tearing his ACL late in the season in 2021, kind of explaining how he looked last season, everything. You really see how his game has transitioned. Speaking of how we got into this first one, but next question I have for you. You know, it's funny because Tom Brady did the 40 again. Did you see that video where he ran it faster than he did when he first did as a rookie? Did you see that, Mitch?
I didn't see that video, but it doesn't surprise me.
Dude, it's like it's insane how he does it. But I want to kind of use this with you. Is there anything that you can do now better than when you were 20? Let's say.
Yeah. Talk to you guys. Talk on the radio.
I was thinking paying bills.
Yeah, I can pay a lot more bills now than I did then. Athletically, I just turned 40 last year. Athletically, once you turn 40, it's all.
That's where your golf game goes up, you know, and they wonder why golf is so expensive. It's because, you know, we're the ones paying for it.
Right, exactly.
Last question I have for you, Mitch. If you had to
hold on. You're not getting away. What do you do better now than you did when you were 20?
It's definitely golfing, without a doubt, and it's probably listening, because I listen a lot better now to my wife than I ever did to my parents.
What about you?
I'd probably say talking. I was not a big talker back in my like teens and 20s. I was just more of a listener and a nod my head type of guy. But now I've got my public speaking skills up. Just a pinch.
Just a pinch.
Just a pinch. I like
All
that.
right, what do you
Just
got
a
for me?
pinch. All right, last question I have for you, brother. Going into draft night, if you had to make the choice, if you couldn't just stay at 2, if you had to either trade up or trade back, what are you doing?
Those are my two options: trade
Yeah.
up and trade back. Trade back. No
Really?
question. Yeah.
Are you taking a
listen,
quarterback with the first pick still, or are you going a different direction? Like, let's say you did trade back, let's say, hypothetically, to 10. Are you still going to target a quarterback at 10, or are you going to go another direction?
At 10, I'm probably going another direction. I
Okay.
think you're at 10. I think you're kind of borderline of getting one of the top, 3 or 4 quarterbacks that are in the draft. I mean, at the end of the day, like the one thing I took away from Indianapolis was that evaluators around the league were higher on Drake May and JJ McCarthy than I think the general public is. That's not to say anything about Jaden Daniels, but I think folks there like those two players a fair amount more than kind of I've seen in a lot of the fan mock drafts and stuff like that. I don't know that I believe in JJ McCarthy. I would want to see a little bit more before investing in a guy that highly in the draft. But if you go beyond those top 4 quarterbacks, I don't know that the value's there in the mid late rounds. And quite frankly, if I don't go quarterback this year, and then to game this out you're probably signing a veteran for a season or two. Next year is going to be a lean year for the Commanders. I mean, I would love to sit here and say that I think they're going to turn it around and win double-digit games, and maybe they will. If you hit the right quarterback, you can win a lot of football games. But
True.
more than likely, it's going to be another rather lean year, and you're probably going to be back in the top 10-ish, drafting. So, then you have an opportunity to take a quarterback next year if you want to fill out the roster a little bit. But again, if I'm the GM, I'm not trading. I'm entertaining all the trade offers. I'm not making a trade, and I'm taking Jaden Daniels at number 2.
My man, thank you so much for joining us on this Monday evening, Mitch. Be able to give us your thoughts on the latest and all the craziness surrounding Washington. Hope you have a good week, brother. Enjoy it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Mitch Tischler. Always appreciate being able to talk to Mitch and everything that he has to say. I'm sorry, I just thought about that Tom Brady one, and I know he put me on the spot because I didn't even think about it for myself.
I know, right? Put me on the spot. I was like,
Yeah, if you asked our president, definitely wouldn't be riding a bike. I know that for sure. Now, let's go to our next question. This is from the Colonel, and he said he will have a couple, but he actually never sent any in, Colonel, so I will have to talk to you at some point, sir, because that's not acceptable. This one is from David on Twitter. I know we all expect a quarterback at 2, but if we traded back, would you rather take one of the quarterbacks projecting to go later or go with a veteran coming in free agency?
That's a good question. Really, the only veteran out there really that's worth because my thing is if you're gonna trade back and not draft a quarterback like in the first couple picks, then I'd rather see them go after a guy like Kirk Cousins, just because to me that would show like, okay, we think a little bit better than the roster of the roster than the general public. And if we just add a couple pieces, do a couple tweaks here and there, we think that we can get right back in the mix and maybe compete for that 7th seed, which I know everyone's like, that's what we've been doing forever. But you already have the foundation and the building blocks of your draft haul that you got this year as your foundation of the team going forward. And obviously, you're still going to have to address a quarterback, which is why I'm not team kick the can down the road. I'm not team draft back or trade back and draft like a JJ McCarthy or a Bo Nix or whoever it might be in that maybe that middle to like back end of the first round. I'm take the guy at number 2, whoever you think that guy at number 2 is, taking them at number 2, and then from there, if you want to trade back up and get a tackle, if you want to take a tackle at 36 or 40 like Mitch said, or vice versa, I'm all for that. But I just want to I'm just tired of not having a quarterback. I've been having a quarterback my entire life. I had 1 year of RG3. We had 2 or 3 years of Kirk Cousins, whatever it was. I want a quarterback.
You have to excuse my friend David. He's a little slow. All right? He's had a rough time the past 20 years. Up until this point, he's been beaten and bludgeoned to death at this point, just emotionally, spiritually, you know. But seriously, David, I'll say this. I would rather go with the quarterback later on in the draft. And one of the reasons I say that is historically with this football team, it's built up the team and then allowing the quarterback to find its way into absorbing itself. And I think that teams like Seattle, other teams like that have been able to bring in, like Philly, for example, being able to mold that quarterback in, Dak Prescott, from those middle rounds, that's when you kind of really find something. Yes, you don't have that 5th-year option, but you'd at least rather have that issue come up than not have that quarterback. And so I'd rather go down that route of being able to still get the quarterback in this draft rather than going down free agency. Because like Hall said, the free agency is a great aspect to go down if you're able to get Tom Brady. If you're able to get a very motivated individual to prove themselves at that age, then yes, absolutely, that's a good way to go about it. But I highly doubt we're going to be getting that kind of individual here of that kind of caliber. And because, in my personal opinion, just thinking about it, like you said, Hall, like you don't want to be worrying what's going to happen in 2 years. Let's get a direction in concrete, in foundation to say this is where we're heading. And that's what I kind of meant a couple weeks ago when I said with Trevor Lawrence, you can't look at me and say Jacksonville taking him at number 1 was a mistake, because Jacksonville now has a direction at least.
Mm-hmm.
At least they're trending upwards as an organization where they can get better than Trevor, obviously, but they're better than where they were before.
And that's my point about the whole like Justin Herbert. People are like, oh, well, what has he won? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you're right. He hasn't won anything. Cool. Check mark. You got that argument. You know what they don't have to worry about for the next 10, 15 years? They don't have to worry about a quarterback. They can build everything else around that quarterback. So, like, I get the whole trade back. You got to fill the holes of the roster, blah, blah, blah. Drop the quarterback in. Unless you're, like you said, one of those teams like Tampa Bay or one of those teams that's like Denver that's ready-made for a quarterback. And even then, you've seen they dropped Russell Wilson in there. That didn't work out.
Well,
Tom Brady.
Peyton.
Peyton Manning, Matt Stafford.
Well, that was a
Tom
really
Brady.
good team. Yeah, like
Matt Stafford. Exactly. It was a really good teams with really, really, really good coaches. And on top of that, you're talking about dropping in like top 5, top 10 quarterbacks. You know what I'm saying?
You're absolutely right. I have a thought here, and you're absolutely right, because in your defense and what you're saying, Washington is much more in the position of drafting Goff much more so than they are in the future of adding Stafford at this current moment in time.
Exactly. That's my point. That's my only point, where it's like we're not one quarterback away, or one quarterback in one piece like San Francisco, where it was like, oh, we just need Trent and we need Christian McCaffrey, put us over the top. We're not 2 players away. So if they're going to go the trade back route, all right, cool. Get as many draft picks as you can for this year and next year. Get that veteran like a Kirk Cousins type guy, who, yes, you might eat up a little bit of your cap this year, but you've already set the foundation with all the players you're going to draft this year and next year going forward with that veteran quarterback. So then technically in year 2 of that contract with the veteran, you are a quarterback away and you already have your quarterback. Now you can just add around him, kind of like San Francisco did with Trent, C-Mac, make those type of trades. That's my only point, where
– Hey,
you know
all I'll say is we were being asked something this past offseason, and it was allow Sam Howell to play the whole season. If he does well, you have your franchise quarterback. If you don't, you might be picking high enough to do what? To get your franchise guy.
Exactly.
That's where we're currently at. Don't lose sight of where we're at, where the vision was beforehand. That's where we are currently.
And I'll say this with the whole crowd of like, oh, we can get a Bo Nix or a Penix or whoever like the later quarterback is.
Fit in here. I will say that.
I do that because he has that quick passing game. Yeah, he has the quick passing game. But I would say this because they're like, oh, well, look at San Francisco. Look at blah, blah, blah.
So
I know. No. My only point is you can say, oh, look at Brock Purdy. Look at Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, you're right. I give you that. They have a great team around them with average to a little bit above average quarterbacks. They also have Kyle Shanahan. We don't have no Kyle Shanahan here. So that's my only point with the whole – we can do it with a lesser quarterback with a great team. You have to have a Kyle Shanahan type coach to get you there.
I don't believe that because the Steelers did do it with Big Ben, who owns the worst QBR rating for any winning quarterback in the Super Bowl history.
They had Bill Cowher. He's a great coach.
The defense is my point. Like they had everything else built.
Yeah. They had a great team, and they just
But that's where our 3 Super Bowls are built from. It is possible, but you have to build a freaking juggernaut.
But you're also talking about like 20 years ago, 20 years ago, Big Ben, like there's a whole different NFL
and also
now.
The Steelers had the refs helping them too, but that we don't need to get into that. Now, the last question that we have in the Discord from Deluxe, were there any big surprises at the Combine Hall? I know you briefly talked about it before.
Yeah, my surprise would just be the amount of hype that the wide receiver class is getting with just because like obviously like you said Worthy with the 4-2-1 breaking John Ross's record and but just the overall depth of people coming out of Indianapolis and just all the measurements, all the testing that went down. And I just think that again, if this is a year for great offensive linemen and great receivers, we need offensive line help, and one could argue we need a little bit of receiver help. So I think that it bodes well for us going into this draft.
Yeah, were there any big surprises? There was one big surprise. I didn't get any text from Reed about any wieners popping out. I was expecting that was going to happen at one point. But in all seriousness, honestly, Deluxe, the biggest surprise to me, well, I can't really say it's a surprise because, I'm being kind of facetious right now. But basically, that Caleb Williams didn't interview with the Bears. He didn't sit down with them. He pushed it onto his pro day. When somebody keeps telling you something doesn't smell like gas, but the more you keep getting closer to it, it's smelling like gas. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's time to get the hell out of the house. And I think that's where I'm at this point is something's boiling, and I'm liking what's smelling and what's cooking on the stove right now. And hopefully we're able to eat for supper at the end of April. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this episode. I also do have a new show come every Sunday night with Red Zone in the Lab with Adam and Neba, Ken Johansson, and Deuce. We go over the draft process. We go every Sunday. We're going to be talking about new developments that have happened, so make sure you go check that out. We did our latest episode, Red Zone in the Lab. And if you want to see my film breakdowns on Twitter of NFL draft prospects, you can go to my Twitter at the Burgundy Zone. You can search for it there and find me, the Podfather. And then also you can find Hall at TBZ Money Mike 301. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
And we'll see you guys again on Thursday. Have a great, safe week. Enjoy this beautiful weather. We'll see you then. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.